Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, Living in Fort Lauderdale with Kevin Sue. So, today we're going to delve into something that's become really serious. It's a piece of legislation that could potentially shake up the entire short-term rental market here in Florida. Not just in South Florida, but all around Florida. So whether you're a property owner yourself, or you're just kind of interested in fair treatment for all, this is an issue that really can affect all of us. So grab a seat, buckle up, and get ready to be informed and empowered as we delve into the deep world of property rights and regulations here in the Sunshine State. What is this legislation? What's going on? What's so big about it? So what it's referred to is actually Senate Bill 280 in the Florida House of Representatives, and kind of the current status here. Now, you know what? Go ahead and get started. I know politics is not everybody's cup of tea. It's really not even my cup of tea until we start getting into things that could impact us as property owners, us as investors, and of course us as realtors. But this bill really is something that I think you're going to want to pay attention to. So as of this past Tuesday, March 5th, Senate Bill 280 has made its way to the third reading calendar in the Florida House of Representatives. So now kind of all eyes are on the House to see if they'll follow it in suit or if they'll bring some new perspectives into play. So folks, this is a big deal because it means the bill's gone through all the necessary committees and readings and renovations and everything else, and it's just now one step away from becoming law. And really, what does that mean? Well, it really means that once a bill or proposed bill or proposed law meets this stage, it's scheduled for its final reading and its final vote in the House. So think of it as kind of like the grand finale where lawmakers kind of decide to give it the stamp of approval or not. Okay, and folks, let me tell you, there's a lot at stake here. If this ends up getting approved by both chambers, the Senate and the House, the bill will then head to the governor for further consideration. At this point, they really only have three options. It's either choose signing into law, which means it becomes official, vetoing it or rejecting it altogether, or choosing not to sign it, but letting it become law kind of by default. So there's really, you either do something good, you either say yay, you say nay, or you don't do anything. But if you say yay or don't do anything, it can still become a law by default. So it's going to be interesting to follow along as we see whether this bill becomes a law or not, or takes another turn. I think a number of you are kind of going, okay, Kev, so what the hell are you talking about? What's Senate Bill 280? So basically what it comes down to is it's a bill under current consideration. It's causing a big stir, and for good reason. It essentially aims to tighten the requirements and regulations on short-term rentals. And it could have some impact on property owners right away. So what does this bill exactly entail? What does it mean? What's it going? Well, among other things, it proposes giving local governments greater authority to regulate short-term rentals within their jurisdictions. What this means is that they would have the power to impose stricter requirements for registration and inspection of these properties, potentially leading to increased costs and, of course, more bureaucratic hurdles for property owners. All in all, not necessarily the greatest thing for folks that are looking to invest in short-term rentals or that have already invested in short-term rentals. So really, what is the impact on short-term rentals? Well, what it does is it allows local governments to create vacation rental registration programs, cap maximum overnight occupancy, and kind of establish a little more uniform set of regulations throughout the entire state. It would also require advertising platforms like Airbnb and VRBO to collect and remit specified taxes for certain vacation rental transactions, and require that the advertisements that come through include that certain information. Now, in some respects, that's good. I mean, everybody who's looking to buy or looking to rent a vacation, a short-term rental, they kind of want to know what they're paying for up front. There's a lot of emphasis and effort going on with that. But what the bill really does is it authorizes the division to revoke, refuse to renew, or suspend vacation rental licenses under circumstances and conditions. So, for example, if they don't think that you're being compliant with one part of it or another, that could be a big problem and cause you to have your ability to actually rent, to generate business with short-term rentals. It could be suspended or it could be revoked. What a lot of the opponents are saying is that it could really potentially impact the short-term rental market by increasing the regulatory burden on an already burden on property owners, the platforms themselves, again, VRBO and Airbnb, possibly leading to fewer listings be available and increased costs for consumers, basically putting a really difficult crunch on the short-term rental market here in the state of Florida, not just in South Florida, but the entire state of Florida. So folks, you know, I'm Kev, and we're living in Fort Lauderdale with Kev and Suze, okay? We're one of the original YouTube channels down here for the Fort Lauderdale area, okay? And one of the things that we love doing more than helping everybody else who with any kind of real estate related questions, because Suzanne and I we are both licensed realtors, okay? It's basically sharing the area around Fort Lauderdale and the area in South Florida, especially areas like Pompano Beach, where folks have been asking us about specific information. We love sharing that information with everybody. We love showing everybody basically, you know, where we live and why we love living here. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to give us a call, shoot us a text, drop us an email, DM us, okay, or click on the link below and you can go ahead and set up a 40 to 45 minute session where we can talk about Pompano Beach, Fort Lauderdale, South Florida, any kind of real estate related issues or questions you guys may have, okay? Please feel free to drop, and oh, by the way, okay, make sure that you click the bell to get notified every time we drop a new video out so you can subscribe. Please hit like if you like it, okay? And if for some reason you didn't like it, please let us know so that we can make improvements, okay? And also, please, if you would, share this with all your friends and family so they can get kind of the 411 on everything going on around here in Pompano Beach, the Fort Lauderdale area, and South Florida. So what does this mean for property owners? So let's kind of dig into this, what it means from the standpoint of being a property owner. Now, as most of us know, short-term rentals come in a number of different flavors. If you have a condo and you're in the area where you're zoned and your association allows it, you can go ahead and use Airbnb, use VRBO, or use your own marketing to rent out your property from a short-term perspective. If you're in some of the condo-tel areas like the Hilton, the Trump, some of the Wyndham properties, okay, they'll go ahead and take care of that management for you. But in many cases where you have folks, especially around special occasions, Super Bowl, sporting events, the International Boat Show in October, a lot of folks will go ahead and just rent out their own property, you know, for a week, a weekend, whatever, and from a short-term rental perspective. What ends up happening is that, you know, and you can rent your property out for anybody who wants to really come down into Florida, or more specifically in the South Florida area, you know, who just kind of looking for a little taste of paradise and maybe just kind of coming down for a special event. And if this bill passes, you could be facing a whole new set of challenges. So, you know, let's kind of talk about some of the financial implications initially. With local governments given free rein to set registration and inspection fees, you could be looking at a significant increase in your operating costs for your properties. And also, like everything else, let's not forget about the fines that can be imposed for non-compliance. Even if it is completely non-intentional non-compliance, there are still going to be fines and penalties for doing that. But perhaps what's even worse is the fact that you could have your ability to have short-term rentals, to run short-term rentals, you could have it suspended or even revoked over some of these more minor infractions. So kind of imagine from the standpoint, you know, you've gone ahead, you've done all your calculations, you've made all of your investments, you got everything set up, and you've worked really hard to go ahead and get your property where you want it to be. You've established some great relationships and great rapport with Airbnb, VRBO, and other marketing agencies. And all of a sudden, okay, it all gets tossed out the window due to a small misunderstanding from a newly created or from a newly authorized government agency that really has no idea what the hell you're doing and what the hell they're doing. So let's look at some of the potential consequences here. Let's kind of take a look at some of the broader implications of the Senate Bill 280 also. If this legislation passes, it could have a ripple effect throughout the entire short-term rental market throughout the entire state of Florida. And it would not be a large jump to see some of the other states in the country kind of following suit. So, you know, for starters, the owners, property owners and the investors are going to have to pass these increased costs on to their guests, you know, resulting in higher prices, which may end up pricing your particular property kind of out of the local market. You know, and with stricter regulations potentially leading to, these could lead to actually potentially fewer available rentals. Travelers, you know, coming down to rent could find themselves with fewer options or more limited options when planning their vacations. Definitely not a good scenario to be in when essentially Florida and South Florida more specifically is known as the vacation capital of the country, and in many cases the vacation capital of the world. But let's not just look at owners and tourists who stand to lose. The local economies that rely on these tourism dollars, they could take a hit if the vacation rental business has to struggle to stay afloat under the weight of these burdensome regulations. I mean, Senate Bill 280 could have a potential consequences for private property owners in Florida who wish to rent their homes out on a short-term basis. You know, as we said before, there are a number of folks that we've talked to that are happy to go ahead and rent their single-family home out during high-volume times, like the International Boat Show in October in Florida. There are a number of folks that can cover most, if not all, of their operating costs in that 1 week just for renting out in that 1 week period. So this could be put a significant crimp or a significant crunch on their ability to do that. So, and there's a couple other pieces that kind of fall into play here. One of them is called preemptive removal. So what this means is that the current preemption on local governments for adopting zoning and ordinances specific to short-term rentals, that they can go ahead, these local governments can come in and they can say, okay, we don't want to do this anymore, you know, as well as regulating the duration of the stays and the frequency in which properties are rented. Right now, it's kind of an open market. You can stay 1 day, you can stay anything up to 30 days is considered a short-term rental. In some areas, anything up to 6 months it may be considered a short-term rental. But folks, again, as we've pointed out in some of our other videos, anything less than 30 days is going to require you to pay for occupancy tax and have a, you know, in addition to sales tax. If local governments come in and start saying you can only rent out once every 30 days or 3 times every 30 days, and your maximum rental period can only be 5 days, that's going to put a big crimp in a lot of the marketing strategies for a lot of folks that have purchased these properties for investment purposes. The other thing about it is consumer protection. A lot of the critics argue that the bill does not provide adequate consumer protection. For example, the bill gives the owner short-term rentals 15 days to rectify a problem, which many opponents say is too long since most guests do not stay that long and they're on to other things and you have other guests coming back in. This could potentially lead to all kinds of issues for neighborhoods and communities affected by the short-term rentals, both mostly in a negative way. Another thing it does, it comes as, we're referring to it as occupancy confusion. And it doesn't specify that sleeping areas must be bedrooms, which could also lead to confusion regarding the maximum occupancy of rental properties. Now, a number of years ago, my brother-in-law and a number of us went down from Georgia, went down to Jacksonville to go watch the Florida-Georgia game. And we did an Airbnb short-term rental, okay, and essentially it could sleep 6. There was 1 bedroom and there were 4 couches. It slept 6. It doesn't specify the number of sleeping areas. They could run afoul of some of the local ordinances, because local ordinances specify the occupancy limits based on the number of bedrooms, and it could be overridden by the less specific state requirements. The other thing too is we talk about this a lot, is registration and licensure. Local governments can establish registration programs for these short-term rentals, but they're really limited to what they can require from property owners. For example, they can only charge a fee of no more than $150 per unit for processing an individual registration application and $50 per unit for a yearly renewal fee. This could lead to increased costs for property owners who need to register their rentals. Now, in addition to the licensure, the registration fees, the bill will allow local governments to charge what is a reasonable fee for inspections to ensure compliance with Florida Building and Fire Prevention Code, and impose a $300 fine for failure to register. These fees themselves could add additional financial burden to property owners who are not in compliance with new regulations. So folks, are there any potential benefits for the Senate Bill 280 for private owners in Florida? So folks, you know, I mean, honestly, it's not all doom and gloom necessarily. The Senate Bill 280 did offer several potential benefits for private property owners in Florida who are involved in short-term rentals. The benefits stem from establishment of some uniform standards across the state, which can lead to more predictable and really a little more fair regulatory environment for property owners. I mean, they can have some like uniform short-term rental standards and really just kind of aim for some uniform standards for short-term rentals across the state. The uniformity can really benefit owners by simplifying the regulatory landscape and actually making it easier for them to comply with regulations without having to navigate a patchwork of local ordinances. The uniform standards can also help ensure that all short-term rental properties are subject to the same rules, creating kind of a level playing field for property owners. The other thing that they're proposing is this 24/7 complaint handling. And what this really means is that they're mandating that all owners of short-term rentals ensure availability of a contact person for grievances around the clock. Now, folks, I can tell you, from the standpoint of an owner, that may be a little bit of a challenge from a cost perspective. From the standpoint of somebody who's also rented short-term rentals in other parts of the country, okay, that can actually be kind of a boon to things. It can actually be a plus for marketing if they know that they have somebody that can reach out and take care of things. So I mean, and it can also provide some by providing a clear protocol for addressing complaints, potentially reducing conflicts with neighbors, and kind of enhancing the overall guest experience. But one of the biggest things that the proponents of this are saying is that it can help to prevent price gouging. Now, folks, here in South Florida, whenever we have that June through November little hurricane action going on, 3 local governments, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, they start going into anti-price gouging. Having regulations regarding the uniformity, it can actually help further prevent this price gouging. It would seek to prevent price gouging by establishing, reasonable fees for registration and inspection of short-term rentals. Okay, and by capping the fees, And the legislation can help protect the property owners themselves from excessive charges that would otherwise reduce their rental income or actually make it prohibitively expensive for them to be able to rent at all. Now, folks, while the bill has faced opposition from local governments and residents concerned about losing local control, and there's a lot of validity to that, potential benefits for property owners highlight the bill's aim to balance the interests of the various stakeholders. By providing a standardized network for short-term rentals, it could help foster a more sustainable and more equitable short-term rental market in Florida. So say a lot of the proponents. So in summary, what the proponents are advocating is that it aims to establish more uniform standards for short-term rentals across the state, which can benefit all the property owners by simplifying regulations and kind of creating a level playing field or a standardized playing field. So some of you may be going, Kev, well, what about the Senate Bill 280 from 2022, a couple years ago? What's the difference between this new one from 2024 and the one in 2022? Well, folks, it's real simple. The previous Senate Bill 280 that was pushed through in 2022, that really dealt more with local ordinances and not really the short-term rentals. The 2024 version focuses specifically on regulation of vacation rentals, including collection of taxes by advertising platforms and the establishment of a uniform regulatory network, a framework. Somebody's got to explain that piece to me, honestly, as far as uniform regulatory framework within any kind of local, state, or federal government. I see that being kind of oxymoronic myself. And this is a shift from the 2022 bill, which was more broadly focused on the relationship between local governments and the state regarding the enactment of ordinances that would allow for certain areas of the localities to be zoned for short-term rentals. The 2024 version focuses on issues such as tax collection by advertising platforms and, again, establishment of consistent regulations for the short-term rentals themselves. So, in contrast, the 2022 version had a much broader scope in dealing with the relationship between the local governments and, again, the state in terms of actual ordinances or how things would happen at a much higher level. So, there are also, obviously, opponents to things. And there is a lot of opposition coming through for Senate Bill 280 from the some of the residents are concerned about the preemption of local control. And for example, the city of St. Augustine opposes a bill, citing concerns it would eliminate their ability to regulate parking and occupancy. Folks, it's down here in South Florida, the ability to park is a big issue, and parking has become a significant moneymaker for some of the localities. Opponents also argue that local governments should have the power to regulate short-term rentals to address the unique needs of their communities, such as preserving the character of historical areas or managing parking or traffic concerns, such as what St. Augustine is really kind of advocating. The bill also faces opposition from those who believe it infringes upon the local government's ability to manage a short-term rental market in their communities. Again, the previous versions were more focused on ordinances. This is really kind of coming down to impacting the locality's ability to try to manage that market, the nuances of that hyper-local market for short-term rentals. If you go into certain areas of Florida, and especially here in South Florida, where you're known for certain things, for certain aspects. I mean, you have Cooley Hammock, which is known for, it's one of the oldest areas in South Florida. It's kind of known for its eclectic view, the eclectic way it's looking at things. Las Olas is known for its shopping and its dining and its entertainment. And the local markets, the local governments are also very concerned about the ability that they'll lose control over being able to affect those and to maintain those.